I think that there's a trend in gaming content creation where the content creators feel like everything needs to be demonstrated perfectly to the best of their ability. It's all about those pro gamer moves and look at what an expert I am. And whilst I am out here trying to teach you guys how EVE Online works, I think ultimately it can sometimes be better to showcase when I screw up. And if that can show that it still works when it screws up, well, that really kind of hammers home how powerful a fit can be, I think. It also helps keep my content a bit more real and helps teach you what to do in those situations, because we all mess up sometimes. No matter what the people on the EVE Reddit might tell you, we all mess up sometimes. So today, I'm going to be showcasing a Hurricane running Class 2 J-Space ratting sites. I'm going to show you that this ship does these ridiculously well, even when you're a complete and utter screw-up like me. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and the ship on screen now is the Silent Rose. If you know much about this channel, you know how much I adore this particular Hurricane. This is the OG hull that has been around since I first started playing EVE Online way back in 2012. Now that I've said that, watch as I lose this ship in the next week or so. I am a screw-up at EVE Online, there's no two ways about that, and so in this video I'm going to show you how screw-ups like us can still do really well and fly the ships that we want to fly rather than just the ones that people tell us we should. I did a video recently showcasing the Caldari Drake in Class 2 ratting sites in wormholes, and ultimately that is a freaking excellent ship for that role. It does those sites very well, very easily, very cheaply, but it got me thinking, if the Caldari Drake can do it, can the Hurricane? I love this ship to pieces. It may not be my most used ship in EVE Online, but it's definitely my favourite, and if I have an excuse to undock it, damn, I'm going to do it. And so that's exactly what I did. I'm going to take you on that journey. I'm going to showcase the fit that I'm using, which does work for those Class 2 sites really well, and then I'm going to show you how you can screw it up and still survive. Hopefully, you'll enjoy this one. If you do, please hit like, drop a comment down below letting me know what your favourite moment was, what you would have done differently. Let me know if you're running any kind of content in a Hurricane. Let me know what you're enjoying at the moment. I love chatting with you guys in the comment section, and those of you who do join my Discord, again, we've got giveaways and that going on there now frequently. Absolutely come join. I love chatting with you all and just hearing how you're getting on in the game. Beyond that, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel and keep me making content like this, you can do so by finding me on Patreon, PayPal, or my Redbubble merchandise store. New designs are on the way, folks. Looking forward to showcasing some of those. There's also some really cool stuff based on this ship, the Silent Rose. Anyway, with all of that shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's jump right in to talking about how to take a Minmatar Republic Hurricane through C2 ratting sites and how it survives even if you're a massive screw-up. Now, if you're coming to this video from the C2 Drake one, you're going to notice some sort of parallels side by side here. I essentially used the Drake as a concept for where to start with this because I enjoy passive shield tanking my Hurricane, so I wanted to see if I could do that again. You'll spot immediately if we look at the bottom right that this is a lot more expensive. This is literally almost 3 times as expensive as the C2 Drake. So do bear that in mind before you go ahead. I'm not saying this is the best ship for this task, just I really like the Hurricane, and if you give me an excuse to undock this, I will actually undock this one rather than the Drake, because to me, it's more fun to fly what I enjoy than it is to just fly what's best. But again, I get that different strokes, different folks, some do enjoy just going for the best and will look at me sideways when I say, hey, you can do this in a 90 million-esque ship, but here's a 240 million one that does it almost as well. Anyway, so, first things first, before we even look at the fit, I kind of just need to say that, look, I'm aware, I'm selling this video as, look at me, I'm a screw-up, but the point I'm getting at is that even when I screw up, this ship works. It works really well, and I'm having a lot of fun running it. So, we've got pretty solid DPS, 542.9, that's at surprising range as well, because of course we're using projectile cannons, these have pretty good range for the autocannons and that as well. This is pretty good alpha strike, 1.468 there, we're getting really good heal per sec, actually more than we were getting on the Drake there, 200 hit points per second, and yeah, you could probably do this cheaper. This one's fairly blingy, as we'll see in a moment. Now for the high slots, I'm running 425mm AutoCannon IIs. These have, with Hail M fitted in there, optimal range of about 2 kilometers and a fall off of around 18. If we were to swap that to Barrage, on the other hand, that fall off pushes all the way to 33 kilometers. That is significantly further and gives us a lot more range, variety and variation when we're running these sights. So we can shoot stuff as we approach with the Barrage. Really useful for frigates actually, because the Alpha Strike on Barrage is terrifying and can take those out in like 2 hits. Then once we start to get a little bit closer to things, we swap to Hail and we cycle from there. I also carry Plasma M just in case, Phased Plasma M just in case, because it gives me a nice middle ground between the two, but I tend to mainly be using Hail or Barrage. You have been warned. Now, the final slot in the high slot here is a Core Probe Launcher 1. If you haven't seen in other videos where I'm talking about wormhole life, if you have a high slot, if you have a ship and you're undocking without a Core Probe Launcher in your high slots, in wormholes, you better have a good reason. It is very easy for a connection to collapse behind you, or for someone else to roll a connection and suddenly you are stranded. The only reason that you don't fit a Core Probe Launcher to a ship that you are using is if you are flying with an expanded probe launcher, or if you have someone in the same fleet as you, in the same system as you, with one fitted that can do things for you. Even then, it's kind of risky. I've heard horror stories of people jumping through and having a wormhole collapse behind them whilst the other person's waiting to come through and them being separated. It happens! Or you get jumped in PvP and they blap the other ship. Now, for the mid slots, again, we are going for sort of a passive-ish tank here. I'm currently running a Multispectrum Shield Hardener II. You can see pretty good resistances across the board. They're 29.3% with this active. We do then have 2 Republic Fleet large shield extenders. This just helps cram it into the power grid a little bit easier, and the CPU, and just helps keep that nice. We've got nice extended EHP here, not quite as big as we had on the Drake, which was sitting at nearly 50,000. This is below 40,000, but it does still work pretty well, and unlike the Drake, we have a 10 meganewton afterburner, so we are a little bit faster moving. We kind of have to be, because we're running autocannons, which means, you know, we need to keep within range of things. We're also going to be signature tanking quite a bit as well, because compared to the Drake, this is a pretty small ship. It's not small by any stretch of the imagination, but it's kind of, you know, it does well. It does well, which is pretty cool. It helps by moving, it just keeps the damage that you're taking reduced, and there are a lot of ships in these sites that you can just orbit and actually not worry about it. You don't even get hit by them. To keep the shield tank going in the low slots, we've got a bunch of shield power relay 2s, 4 of them fitted in order to push up that HP per second, and this does go with the rigs as well. Medium core defense field Purger 2s, you can probably get away with the 1s there. These are a little bit blingy, but it just, because it gave me that nice round number of 200, I think it was like 192 otherwise using the standard 1s, so whether that 8 HP per second is worth it for you is, yeah, it's your choice, right? This left us with 2 low slots. A Gyrostabilizer II fills one of them, and a Tracking Enhancer II fills the other. Now, if you fly this thing a bit better than I have recently, you can probably drop a shield power relay for another gyro. Heck, you could probably even drop the Multispectrum Shield Hardener and swap this out for some other kind of resistance module as well. We do want some resistances, because that electromagnetic there is atrocious. It's almost tempting to swap out the Multispectrum here for something like a standard EM, an EM shield hardener. Even then, that's going to leave us with a thermal hull, though. It's interesting. This is one of those things that when you see it on paper, you kind of look at it and go, this fits awful. And compared to the Drake, it is, but it works, and I really, really need to stress the fact the point isn't that this is the best ship you could be using. It's, if you want to fly this ship, here's how you can use it. The Drake will do this better. If you are sort of sitting there on a new account going, oh, I want to get into wormholes, which ship should I aim for? Absolutely go down the Caldari line. You can get into the Drake nice and quickly and easy early, start running C2s, and then from there, you can comfortably swap into the Tengu, and that is a great little ship that will cover you for PvP and PvE and all kinds of stuff and allow you to push up. Then eventually you can come back into the Caldari tree and go up to the Golem, which is absolute god tier for C5 ratting, so you do have a nice little path there. With the Minmatar Republic, we're going into the Hurricane, and we can then come back to the Loki. The Loki does work really nicely with autocannons. That is a ship that I run on this character. Arguably, it does it better than this one does, but it's also a lot more expensive. It's like, again, almost triple the price of this Hurricane. So it depends on which route you want to go, because the Minmatar Republic then also put you into the Varga, which is very popular for C5, so it's up to you. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling on here. Before we jump into the combat demonstration, I do want to point out we do have drones here. They're nothing particularly special. This character is not heavily drone skilled either. I'm running Republic Fleet Warriors and Imperial Navy Acolytes in there because I don't have the skills to use Tech 2 variants. They're useful. They're useful for pushing up the damage that little bit higher against whatever you're attacking, and they are pretty good at applying to the frigates, which again sometimes can get under your guns, but that's why we have again hail and barrage. Enough talking though, let's undock this and showcase how everything went wrong and yet this still worked. Like with the Drake, I'm going to showcase this fit in a perimeter hangar. This is the Class 2 ratting site that has the highest output of DPS. Therefore, if I can survive this one, I should theoretically be able to survive the others. I've run a couple of these with no issues at all, and it's the usual process that I follow for this kind of site. Warp in at 0, drop the mobile tractor unit, bookmark the mobile tractor unit, lock onto everything else. It's that simple. Now we're going to move towards something. In this case, it's going to be one of the cruisers. Now ultimately the cruisers are the final point here that you need to clear. Once the cruisers die, that's when the next wave spawns, and for a perimeter hangar you can think of that as your rule of thumb. Now the first thing I should have noticed here, and I kind of have at this point, is that the Emergent Watchman has already taken some damage. That means someone has been ratting nearby already and has warped in and shot this and decided to warp out again? Goodness knows, I don't know what's going on there, but I've come in with a little bit of damage on the Emergent Watchman. I may as well blap that nice and quickly. I think at this point I'm running Hail, or no, actually I'll be running Barrage because it's the first thing. I warp into the site, I want the long range ammunition. Now the tracking isn't great on Barrage, but the damage is still pretty good enough to take those out without me having to reload. At this point you can see there, yep, I'm swapping to Hail now because I'm close to that Awakened Patroller. I've got my orbit set at 6,000 meters, so I'm just gonna keep orbiting that Awakened Patroller and burn it down with the Hail ammunition. That's kind of all there is at this point in time. Orbit, shoot, keep descanning to make sure that nothing's about to jump us, and, well, let the drones do their thing. Silly, I've gathered 4 Republic Fleet Warriors and 4 Imperial Navy Acolytes, so I'm always going to have at least one of the other type out, but considering Sleepers have Omni-Resist, it kind of doesn't matter, so I've just got 4 Acolytes and 1 Republic Fleet Warrior going at the moment. It doesn't make a huge difference what type of drones you use. Obviously the speed and application does come into it, but the actual damage type doesn't when we're running this kind of content. The death of this Awakened Patroller will be the trigger. The third cruiser to die triggers the second wave coming, so if you hadn't killed the frigates, you're going to be stuck with them and Wave 2. It's just going to take a couple more hits to take this Awakened Patroller out, and then Wave 2 is going to spawn. Wave 2 has a battleship in it, a Sleepless Watchman. I know this is coming, so the first thing I'm going to do is immediately re-angle myself off here to start approaching as quickly as possible. I'm also going to swap to Barrage. I need Barrage because it's the longer range on this one, but I'm immediately changing my heading. I'm not going to fly straight towards that battleship because that's a stupid thing to do. Flying straight towards a battleship whilst it's shooting at you with turrets is a surefire way to get yourself killed. But I do want to close the gap quickly. I'm fast moving, and therefore I can kind of avoid some of the incoming damage a little bit easier, but I want to be faster. I need to be faster, so I start to overheat my Afterburner. And those of you who know me have probably already figured out where this anomaly goes wrong. Yeah, it's the Afterburner. Spoiler alert, I don't forget to turn it back off, but we're moving closer, getting closer and closer to that Sleepless Watchman. I'm using Barrage ammunition to take out that Awakened Escort because the Barrage ammunition has a fall-off of 33 kilometers, so I'm 50% effective now, actually better than 50% effective now that I'm 30 kilometers away, and we are chipping away at that Awakened Escort quite quickly. I don't want to kill both Awakened Escorts though, because that will then spawn Wave 3, remembering that the cruisers are the triggers. So I've spiraled in nicely on the Sleepless Watchman at this point. I'm now about to just go into an orbit and start orbiting this at 6,000 meters in order to just get the good application. Now, remember I said that ultimately the cruisers were the triggers? Oops. I completely forgot about that. So not only have I burnt my Afterburner out, as you can see on the right hand side there, my Afterburner is completely cooked and crispy. I can't run my Afterburner anymore. I now also have that Sleepless Watchman still alive, whilst Wave 3 has spawned with a Sleepless Escort, another battleship, and 2 Awakened Escort cruisers. So I've now got 2 battleships on my hands and 2 cruisers. This is not the situation you want to be in, right? This is not a smart thing to have done. I even knew going into this that the cruisers are the triggers, the cruisers are the triggers, the cruisers are the triggers, and for some reason I decided to shoot both the cruisers. But look at my tank. It's holding. I don't have the Afterburner running, but the tank is holding, just with the Multispectrum Shield Hardener II doing its job there. And I'm currently stripping away at that Sleepless Watchman quite comfortably, and it's going to be a while before I need to reload, a while before I need to do anything, and the tank is holding. Okay, this is the point I'm getting at here, right? That basically, even though I burnt out my Afterburner, I completely made my Afterburner go crispy, and I triggered Wave 3 early, we're still comfortably doing this. If you fly this competently, this works really well. If you fly it like a moron, it still works. With that first battleship down, I can actually focus on Wave 3. I'm going to swap back to the barrage stuff and just start shooting at stuff from range here. This time, it doesn't matter what I kill first, because triggers don't matter on the final wave, right? You'll see that I still need to manually pilot, and I need to be careful about how I manually pilot, because I don't have an Afterburner to suddenly, course correct if I need to. I am stuck here, taking whatever damage I take until such time as I can reduce that damage. So I need to keep my traversal up as best as possible. I don't want to be, completely perpendicular to them. I don't want to be flying a complete right angle to them. That's going to cause problems because I'm just going to go in and out of range all the time. I need to manually kind of spiral inwards. And the ultimate goal here is to spiral inwards until I'm about 10 to 6 kilometers away from the Sleepless Escort, and then I can just hit a standard orbit on that. Now, because ultimately it doesn't matter what I shoot at, I'm going to take out those escorts first. My reasoning for this is that the 2 escorts and the 2 Awakened Escorts and the Sleepless Escort are all doing damage to me, right? If I'm putting out a certain amount of DPS, I can choose to put it onto a different target, and if I put it onto one of the Awakened Escorts, it is a shorter time until a decrease in incoming damage. If I go for the Sleepless Escort, yes, it's a bigger decrease in DPS, but I need my tank to hold until the Sleepless Escort is completely dead. Whereas if I go for the Awakened Escorts first, I can kill one of them quite quickly, and that's going to help me reduce the incoming damage. Now, in this case, I did actually decide to take out the Sleepless Escort next. Perhaps I had suddenly reminded myself that no, the cruisers are the triggers, and thus I'm going, oh no, I can't kill the cruisers, I can't kill the cruisers. But you can see my tank is comfortably holding at this point, even with the slower movement speed, 224 meters per second. Geez, that's horrific. I'm slowly taking down that Sleepless Escort. Currently, I have just swapped to Hail because I'm now within the range that Hail is better than Barrage. And down goes that Sleepless Escort. I can watch a beautiful explosion and then take out the Awakened Escort. This is no longer any form of risk to me from this combat anomaly. I'm going to change back to Barrage because the Awakened Escort's a little bit further away, start shooting at that, begin to approach inwards until eventually Hail becomes the better option, and so on we go. Now, it's not like I just run one particular type of site in any ship. Of course, there are other C2 ratting sites as well. For example, the Sleeper data site that I'm currently coming into. It's not a data site as in like relic sites and data sites and hacking. It's still a combat site. That's just what it's called, confusingly. Now, this really, again, should have triggered some sort of, part of my monkey brain to go, oh, hang on a second. Because I know what should be in this first wave. I know that I'm going to have those sentry towers. I'm expecting a couple of other bits and bobs around here, like the different cruisers. I'm not expecting all these frigates. So it looks like someone has actually possibly spawned a wave, or something here has just... It's not what I'm expecting. And I'm taking a lot more damage than I was intending to take at this point in time. But again, we can stay nice and calm. We drop the mobile tractor unit. We do what we did in the last anomaly. Start moving towards a safe point. We want to make sure that those turrets, those sentry guns are, you know, as sideways to us as possible. We want the high traversal. And ultimately, I do want to close gap on them. Now, it is possible to run one of these sites without handling those turrets, just ignoring them. You can get close and just sort of pilot around them and keep your traversal up and they won't even hit you. But at this point, because I've got so many other additional ships hitting me, I'm not exactly thinking straight. And I'm thinking to myself, right, I probably should take those turrets out as well. And I do sometimes do it, just if I want to be a little bit safer. But there we go, it's first ship down, first emergent patroller, and at this point I'm starting to take some damage. My shields are pretty low, right? I've just had the shield alert scream in my ear, and again, and you'll notice as well, my capacitor isn't doing so hot, because this is not a cap-stable ship, and I keep forgetting that. I don't need to be running the Afterburner at all times, but I'm doing it anyway out of a matter of habit. Now that we're closer though, I can start to pick my other targets. I'm going to decide what I'm going to shoot at. Things are a little bit further away, so we're going to go with Barrage, and I'm probably going to take out those sentries first of all. I've also just realised there's a load of stuff missing from my locks, so screw it. Let's start shooting these things and bringing down some of that incoming damage. Now, reducing that incoming damage has helped my tank actually hold. You can see that I'm actually pretty comfortable now. The tank is right the way up, the shields are boosted up nicely. They have just patched themselves up because that's what a passive shield tank does. I've also at this point realised that, oh dear, yeah, my capacitor's a thing, right? So I've switched off my Afterburner and I'm now just drifting. And you can see that even with the Multispectrum shield hardener going and not the Afterburner, I'm not actually taking that much damage at all. It's going pretty well. Then this wave spawns. This is where things suddenly go from sort of, this is a little bit dodgy to, oh, holy hell, this just got nasty. So the next wave spawns. This now has a Sleepless Escort battleship and 4 Emergent Escort cruisers. Okay, frigates, sorry. Okay, you know, we can deal with that. We can deal with that. There's worse, worse things happen at sea. So I'm just going to start blapping these, take these out as quickly as possible, remembering that Sleepless Escort, I need to kind of keep my angular momentum up. We're going to, keep as much traversal as possible so that we don't get too much damage from the Sleepless Escort. And oh damn, those are doing some real damage to those Emergent Escorts. My autocannons are just ripping them apart. Okay, now that they're a bit closer and they've got higher traversal against me, not doing quite so well, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We're pulling away. We're moving towards the battleship that we need to go up towards. I want to close range with that because I want to be using hail on it ultimately for better damage. And finally, there we are. We've got a bit more angular going. So bam, down goes that Emergent Escort. Time to take out the next one. That should go down nice and quickly too. Drones and autos just ripping that one apart. Now, the approach has actually gone pretty well. I've managed to get pretty close to that Sleepless Escort, to the point that I'm orbiting it now, getting so little damage, I've actually turned off the Multispectrum shield hardener to get some of my capacitor back, because, oh boy, I was down to less than 5%, and ideally you don't want to let your capacitor go below about 30%. You want to kind of keep it as best as possible. Now, the final wave here is a Sleepless Outguard. This is a pig of a battleship, and I was not prepared for this at all. I'm a little bit further away than I would have liked. I should have been trying to pull away towards positioning on this one. I'm much lower capacitor than I would like, considering that I need to have my Afterburner running and probably the Multispectrum shield hardener as well. And there's going to be one other significant problem with the Sleepless Outguard that we'll see in just a second. I'm going to overheat the Afterburner because I want to close that range quickly, but it's pulling away from me because this is actually a surprisingly fast-moving battleship. There we are, so I'm just not closing as quickly as I would like, and I'm taking a lot of damage. And if you're looking at the bottom of the screen, you've spotted what the next problem is. That's right, the Sleepless Outguard neutralizes, which means what is left pitifully of my capacitor is just not holding together. I need to get close to this thing, I need to get under those guns. I set a 5 km orbit with the afterburner running for the last few seconds of juice that I have in my capacitor. I'm hoping that I can get in and that I can start holding that orbit as quickly as possible. I've got cannons, so it doesn't matter too much if I run out of capacitor completely, as long as I'm not taking damage. If I'm avoiding the damage that's incoming, and I'm still shooting, I will eventually be fine. So here we are, 6,000 meter orbit currently going on. I'm trying to get 5,000 meters, but I'm a lot further away due to, obviously, inertia, and that's not under the guns. I'm still taking damage, and I'm not doing enough to the outguard. I'm not out DPSing it. Ultimately, it is going to kill me before I kill it. I haven't convinced myself of this fact yet, which is why I am still currently orbiting, despite the fact that my shields are going down. I'm kind of hoping that maybe I'm just, waiting for the orbit to go in. No, I'm taking supreme amounts of damage here. I'm flying like an idiot. Anyone else would have already tightened their orbit, which took me that long to do. Anyone else would have either tightened their orbit or warped off, waited for the capacitor to recharge, and then come back later. Ultimately, that's what I'm going to have to do anyway, because I've made that monumental cock-up, and rather than just, getting in nice and close to that 1,000 meters, I set at 5,000 for so long, and then 8,000, and then start to drift in, that it's practically a straight line, and that Sleepless Outguard is doing huge damage to me, whilst I am slow drifting, because again, my afterburner has no capacitor. But I'm still convincing myself that, hang on, if I can get close enough, all I need to do is get into this orbit range. All I need to do is get into this orbit range and I'll be fine, right? I will be fine. I just got to get to that orbit range. I don't have an afterburner, so I've just got to wait. I've just got to wait. As long as I hold, I'll be fine. 5,000 meters. I've just got 4,000 more till I'm in the orbit range. As long as I can get into that orbit range, I'm going to be fine. I'm now sitting at half armor. I'm not going to be fine. I mean, I would be fine if I can get into that range in time. The issue is, I can't get in time, and at this point, I'm looking at low armor, and I'm like, no. This is actually a mistake. As I discovered later, it actually would have worked. I was at the point where I'm just about to get under those guns and stop taking damage, but the whole stopping, rotating to a line, and warping away suddenly pushes me down into hull. I do make my escape. We don't lose the Silent Rose yet. It's, pretty good. We're okay. I just need to make sure that I actually stop at this point and don't try warping away again. I've abandoned my own drones, but we're going to park up here, we're going to let the shield and capacitor recharge, and then we're going to come back in and try this again, right? Because, yeah. Okay, the capacitor's full enough. We've got full shields and pretty solid capacitor. We're going to warp back into that site. I'll also note, I didn't bookmark the mobile tractor unit, did I? So I just had to come back in at the site. Not a huge problem here, but it would have been nice, and I should have done it anyway, especially since I shout at you guys in my videos to make sure you do it. So now we are 55 kilometers away from that Sleepless Outguard. I've got to close that distance again and start to do everything. So I'm going to right-click as well on my capacitor there and try to reconnect to my drones. This is important because I obviously abandoned my drones and I do want those back. But I've got enough here to run my Multispectrum shield hardener and my afterburner and start closing range with that outguard a lot faster than I did last time. I'm coming in at a better angle. I kind of know that I need to get into the 1,000 meters, and I'm also kind of, using barrage because I'm a bit further away. That's now in full off. So I'm going to do some damage as I approach. I need to swap one of my drones because it's taken a little bit of a beating, but, there we are. That's fine. It is what it is. Launch the next one. Off we go, and you'll see that because I'm moving with the afterburner and because I have the Multispectrum shield hardener running, actually, I'm doing okay. I'm not taking too much damage. I can now go into a nice tight orbit around this and swap to the standard hail so that I'm hitting a bit harder and faster because my capacitor is bleeding quickly. There's no two ways about that. I'm losing capacitor at an astonishing rate at this point in time, whilst I'm, hoping that everything's going to hold. I want to get to that nice close orbit. I've set it to 2,500. I don't think 1,000 is necessary, but I'm going to try and get in a little bit tighter. There we are. We're going to go to 1,000 anyway. Move in, get that orbit, and wreck this thing before it wrecks me. Now, obviously, if someone jumps me at this point, I'm screwed. Like, there's a little bit of shield to go through, and then no structure at all. I'm 74% structure, 75% structure at this point. But it doesn't matter. We are now close enough. I can turn off the Afterburner to help just keep my capacitor running a little bit longer for the Multispectrum shield hardener. I'm taking very little damage at all here. I'm just getting muted, which really, really does hurt. This ship, if I'm going to change this fit at all, which I might do for a future video, I think needs a bit more capacitor stability, but I'm not entirely certain how to get that on the Hurricane. Maybe that is just the kind of downside that we have to accept with the Hurricane. I don't know. But either way, that Sleepless Outguard is no longer damaging me, it can't hurt me anymore. I'm orbiting nice and close, I'm ripping it apart with my hail, and even though I completely cocked up both of these anomalies for this video, somehow the Hurricane comes out the other end, it survived, it worked, and it's made decent ISK. This site took a little bit longer than I was expecting. About 25 minutes rather than the usual 15, but that's because I had to warp out and wait for everything to manually recharge, right? But isn't it worth it for that explosion? I don't know. I don't know. Again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that this is better than the Drake. It's really not. The Drake is definitely the better ship for running this kind of content. But if you like the Hurricane, if like me you like the Hurricane and you want to use it, you absolutely can. You just need to be a better pilot than I am. Although I say that, you don't need to be a better pilot than I am. I'm an idiot, and this still worked. If you're a better pilot than I am, it's going to work even better. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this rather lengthy video all the way to the end. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you would do differently. What big mistakes did you see me make? How would you pilot this differently? Would you use a different fit? What kind of fun misadventures have you gotten up to in EVE Online? Give me an example of a time when you completely catastrophically screwed up and did something stupid. I love those kind of stories because we all have them. We've all done this kind of stupid stuff, and though some people do like to pretend that they're perfect, no one is. No one is, and I think they're actually missing out on some of the coolest stuff in this game by, you know, trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. Anyway, folks, that's everything for today's video. Thank you for watching this one right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!